Hey folks, it is I, Jason Hyatt, with the Tsr TV on the CTW TV network. See, I finally got it out. I had to think about it. I'm sorry we've been kind of absent for the last couple of weeks. Just had a lot of stuff going on, horses to rescue, puppies to take care of, blowing all the muscles out of my elbow, just not in good shape. And then the weather was not fun either. But we're back, and we have a very special guest with us, Gary Glemboski. He will tell you all about himself, but he does operate global tactical training out of, I want to say Savannah, but it's probably Brunswick. It's in between there. He'll tell you all about it here in a few seconds. But I want to thank you all for joining us. And without further ado, we're going to bring Gary on. And well, boom, Gary, we got him. All right. So first and foremost, I'll just let you introduce yourself and tell you about yourself and where they can find you, and then we'll go straight into this.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on, Jason. I appreciate it a lot. My name is Gary Glemboski. I am the director and founder of Global Tactical Training Group here in Savannah. We've been around coming up on 30 years, give or take now. We've gone through some different iterations, but we've been here for a while. I just retired recently from the Chatham County Board of Education Police Department. I've been there for 3 years, which totals me up to 43 years of law enforcement. I was with the city of Savannah for a long time, retired back in 2009 as a lieutenant after spending some time on patrol and SWAT team and training unit and a few other things I did. And then was the chief of police at Hunter Army Airfield for 10 years. And came over to the Board of Education to do some training and recruiting, and finally decided it was time to go, and here we are.
So, 43 years?
Yes.
Good Lord.
I started when I was 6.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, I couldn't imagine doing the same thing for 43 years. But it sounds like you did not the same thing, just the same.
No, it wasn't the same thing. We changed horses a few times.
Oh yeah. So we are going to talk about something that probably hasn't been talked about ever on a show, or really, other than people thinking, well, this is kind of like this in the back of their heads. And that is martial arts and firearms in one fell swoop. And I like the idea because it rings true to my head.
Well, so part of my history, I started training in martial arts when I lived in New Mexico back in 1968, and I fell in love with it right away. I had a couple of my best friends were involved, and had a real good instructor, and I was able to, train a lot initially. Unfortunately, at the time, we had to move. My dad was working for a company and got transferred, and Savannah was where we got transferred to. So the first thing that I did when I got here was looked in a phone book, and some people may remember phone books. These were these paper things that had pages and numbers in them, and looked for karate schools, and there were none. So my mom and I went to all the places, YMCA and et cetera, and we did find a school, a guy that was teaching a class at a YMCA, and I went back and started training with him. Eventually, a couple of years down the road, I made black belt. Eventually went in the Marine Corps, came back to Savannah, and the instructor that I've had since 1971, individual named James Sims, nickname is Jay, who lives in Valdosta, Georgia now, was living here in Savannah, and we were teaching classes at Armstrong State College every night for a few years, and then we opened up a school, and on and on and on. So my background in martial arts is, like, this year will be 54 years. Been studying, training for 54 years. So I got into guns. Actually, before I got into martial arts, I had my first couple 22 pistol and a rifle probably when I was about 11 years old, and subsequently got in the Marine Corps, learned a lot more about rifles and shooting, and then came on the police department, and that's where my baptism with handguns came in. And then it's just been on and on since then. So at some point, I don't know when it was, but I said, there's some things here that kind of go together. There's some things here that the shooting thing over here looks kind of like this karate thing over here, and didn't really think a whole lot of it back in the day. I was fighting professionally in full contact karate, but way before MMA, and I never really gave it a whole lot of thought, and until about maybe the late 80s, early 90s. And can I show this book, Jason?
Oh yeah, you can show it. Go for
All right.
it.
So this book right here was written by a guy named Dan Westerlin. And it's was put out by Paladin Press. It's been long out of print. And when I got it, I looked through it and I was like real hungry, to see if I could fit these two things together. And to be honest, this was a valiant attempt, but it really doesn't go deep enough into really thinking about the connection between the martial arts and shooting. So we fast forward, and over the years, I would scrawl out some things and scratch some things out and start to see many more similarities between shooting arts and empty hand arts. And for just the sake of when I'm talking about martial arts, I'm thinking primarily martial arts, which is pretty basic from a standpoint of most people kind of understand that. So we won't go into the Taekwondo or the Chinese arts or anything like that. It's kind of like it's the Okinawan arts. So over the years, I've always been very interested in looking and seeking out people that may have had similar thoughts or had some background in both arts that could kind of, help me put it together. So I really wasn't successful in that. I do a lot of reading. There was back when guns were first introduced into Japan in the 1400s, systems popped up called Hojitsu-ryu, and there were several schools, but over time, as the hardware changed, the systems that were developed kind of fell by the wayside because they didn't need to do all the loading and different ramrodding things and everything that were needed with the matchlocks and flintlocks and all that other stuff. With the metallic cartridge, things changed a little bit.
Oh yeah.
So all those schools, those Hojitsu-ryu schools, kind of fell to the wayside, and they now become demonstration arts. There are still several active schools, but they're all just demonstration arts. They don't really get out and shoot modern day pistols, because in Japan you're not allowed to own personal weapons. So it's a little bit more difficult. So we fast forward probably to the early mid 90s, late 90s, and I was at a conference it was ASLET conference, maybe in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and there was a gentleman there by the name of Jeff Hall, who was giving a lecture on I'll never forget. It was called "Finish the Fight," and it was all about being mentally aware and being driven by the need to finish the fight if you ever get in a real fight. And it was pretty good lecture, as a matter of fact. And guys like John Farnham and Masada Youb and Dennis Tuller and some other guys were in the lecture. And Jeff's background, pretty interesting fella, spent a number of years with the Alaska State Troopers. And you may remember him because they had a TV show about Alaska State Troopers, if you remember that. And he was on there one time. He and his partner were in a helicopter looking for a murder suspect, located him, trying to get in a car in a parking lot. The guy turned around and shot up at the helicopter, killed Jeff's partner, who was sitting right next to him, and Jeff shot and killed him from that shot and killed the bad guy from the helicopter.
Yeah.
So that was that guy. All right. So he was also, I think he was a staff instructor for the NRA, and he had done a lot of stuff with the NRA. In addition to all the training he had done, he was also a martial artist. And one day he had the bright idea. He had been thinking along the same lines I had been, and he went to some people and they said, look, he said, I would like to make this a system, and here's all my stuff. And they said, okay, trying to keep within the traditional martial arts spectrum of asking permission and everything. So this group of high-ranking black belts that he was affiliated with said, yes, go forth and do good things. And at the end of his lecture at this conference, he says, oh, by the way, if anybody's interested in Hojitsu-Ryu, come see me. And I went, all right. So I waddled up there, and I looked around, and there was John Farnham and Masada Yub and Dennis Tuller standing right next to me. And I trained with John Farnham for many years. As a matter of fact, he's coming up here next weekend to do a rifle class. Jeff started talking, and they all had to go because they had other presentations they had to do. And he and I sat and talked for a couple hours, I guess, and saw where we were of like minds, and we stayed in contact. Now, he was living in Portland, I believe, or someplace, or Spokane, someplace, excuse me, someplace close to there. And we corresponded, and I got involved with his system, and brought him to Savannah a couple times, did a couple clinics, and I went back out to Spokane a couple, 3 years ago. We redid a lot of the standards for progressing through the system and all this other stuff. So it's been pretty good. But as a martial artist and living in the area that I live in, I've always said this, that from a Hojitsu-Ryu standpoint, although there are many similar, I mean, it's just unbelievable. We can sit here and talk all night, and we're just going to hit one thing after another. Yeah. But to get shooters, guys that are shooting IDPA or USPSA or whatever they're shooting, it doesn't make any difference. Or they're just your garden variety, Joe and Minnie 6-pack, got a gun, go to the range and do their thing. To come in and participate in a structured training program, which means that you would train like you would go to a karate class twice a week or whatever the case may be. You come to Hojitsu class once or twice a month or whatever the case may be, and do some of your own stuff. That's a hard sell. I mean, if you're looking at it from a money standpoint, I'm not even talking about making money at it. I'm just talking about getting people interested.
Yeah.
On the flip side, courting martial artists and pulling them into the firearms game has been a lot easier. And I've talked to some people that make a lot of money owning and running martial arts studios, and they were listening to me. And I don't know, I'm not, all that in a bag of chips, but they were listening to me and they say, that's actually a pretty good idea. And I know one of them now, he's a multimillionaire. I spoke to him a couple of years ago at a gathering that there was a bunch of guys from the Southeast that used to fight in tournaments all the time, got together. And then I spoke to him for about an hour and a half. And he now has fundamental firearms training through his martial arts schools.
Nice.
As a standalone part. It's not part of the martial arts training. It's a standalone portion, but it's in his schools. And I know I've talked to several friends that own studios around here, even doing low-level firearms training, firearms safety training, et cetera, like that. And they're all pretty interested in it. So that tie there is there. I mean, there's always an interest in self-defense with martial arts and then self-defense with firearms. And any firearms instructor worth his salt is probably going to tell you that at some point you should have some impulse. Well, what better place to get that than in a martial arts studio if you got a legitimate instructor that knows a little bit about practical application. And so that's
I'll pop that up on the screen for you.
Yeah, that's okay. That probably was me. There's a lot of people. That 76 was probably right at the beginning of my string, or right in the middle of my string. I fought for a long time, about 12 years, both in tournaments and and full contact in a professional karate association. So I think 1981 was the last time I fought, and right before I had my first knee surgery. so,
Yeah.
so
Well, ever since my brain surgery, martial arts for me is out the question. I'm
yeah,
not getting in a fist fight. If one hit to the head will kill me, I'm not even going to try it. So for me, firearms are my only means of defense anymore.
yeah.
So
But there, we get back in, and the other person. So there's a lot of people have had, Corley and Larry Black. Matter of fact, at this group meeting we had up in, it was in Greenville. Joe Corley was talking about the formation of Southeast Karate Association and the history. And I happened to be sitting there, and he's talking about all these people, and he says, "Well, there's a guy right here." He goes, "Gary Glemboski, man, he had a lot to do with the formation of Southeast Karate Association." And I didn't know I did it, but it's all I did was show up and fight. That's what I did. So if that helped them out, I'm glad. They were great. They treated me really nice, and I had a fantastic time. But so with Jeff Hall again, and I've seen a lot of comments on forums and people that know him and all this other stuff. And I'm not here to discuss that at all. I just think that at the beginning, what he's trying to do, still trying to do now, is really push this connection between these two things. All right. So one other person that I know that's shown a lot of interest is Gabe Suarez. Gabe's legitimate martial artist. He's been a martial artist for a long time. I don't know if he still trains. I'm assuming he does. And some of the people that he has in his group are martial artists. And he started talking about similarities and the kata, or the prearranged movements in a traditional martial arts, prearranged movements that you learn from basic to intermediate and advanced. And he was talking about how that footwork and all these things, because we're always talking about as instructors that getting off the X and all these things that happen in a direct situation, because gunfights, much like fist fights, are probably not going to be, you're not going to stand there and quick draw and shoot in the middle of the street. So how do you do all that stuff? What's the most efficient way? What's the most effective way? What about balance? How do you generate speed and power and all this other stuff? And that's all endemic to the martial arts. I mean, that's all part of exactly what all that is. And if you know how to do that, learning how to shoot a gun, and I've been teaching people how to shoot for a long time, law enforcement, military, civilians. And again, a lot of people don't know who I am. I'm nobody. I mean, I'm really not. I go train, with people all the time, the John Farnhams and the Tom Gibbons and all the rest of those people. Those are my mentors. Those are people I learn from on a daily basis. But shooting a gun is not a complicated task. You pick it up, you put your finger on the trigger, and you go, and you press the trigger.
Yep.
It's pretty easy. Okay. It's the rest of the stuff that's complicated that I tell people. I said, it's the gun handling skills. It's knowing when to use it, when not to use it, when it's appropriate to draw all those things that wind up getting talked about after the fact. Everybody wants to go to the range and shoot. Well, shooting is easy. If I give you enough ammo and enough time, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But from a fighting standpoint, actually fighting with a gun, it's not just going to be drawing and shooting. There's a whole lot of other stuff involved in it. And I think that's where martial arts kind of fills some gaps for us. If you study that, makes it a little bit easier to understand.
Yeah, for like me, I learned how to shoot a rifle when I was 14 because my parents didn't want guns in the house. There's a whole thing. They were Air Force, didn't want to register them on bases and all this other stuff as they moved through. But for me, it was always this standpoint, and I never got into martial arts. I wanted to, but once again, parents at the time. But it was always, I was always told, take your time, take your time, take your time, take your time when I was behind the scope of the rifle. And then for me, it was the big key moment for me was, oh, you've got to breathe. And once I figured out the breathing and slowing down didn't necessarily mean I was moving slower. I had to move my brain slower to calm down, to make my shots. That's where everybody talks about martial arts and shooting going together, is that whole mental aspect and then the fundamentals that came with all of it too. So luckily later in life I did get into martial arts. It just happened to be through the US Army and their, hand-to-hand combat training.
That is it.
So
Yeah, but I always tell people, I said, it doesn't mean it was kind of martial arts. Say, sometimes you still got to put fist to face, and that's what it boils down to from a practical standpoint, anyway. And I came up in a very traditional school. My instructors had studied with very traditional instructors, and when we practiced, we trained really, really hard, and that's stories for another time. But I can tell you that the way we trained in the 70s and 80s, if we were to try and do that now, people would not do it. I mean, just wouldn't. And of course, now I wish I could go back knowing what I know now on how to train and use that knowledge back in the 70s and 80s, and I probably wouldn't have 2 new hips, a new knee, and a new shoulder. So I mean, I rattle when I walk now, so I sound like a 1911.
none of mine rattle.
Mine doesn't either. But but I think a lot of other things you can take martial arts that impact shooting are the discipline part of it, and the all those things that the martial arts are known for will translate directly into your ability to shoot better. It's like we were out on the range this past weekend with a class, and it was hot. I mean, it was really hot. And we took a break. We were training in the morning, and I said, okay, take about an hour for lunch and come back and let's go. So everybody gets back about 1 o'clock, and we're going through some drills, and I see a couple of shots being pitched, and I said, hey guys, look, I said, I know it's hot. I said, you just got to finish eating lunch. Nobody cares. I said, not to be ugly. I mean, nobody really cares. I mean, I'm as hot as you are. I wasn't the oldest guy there. There was one other guy there that was a little bit older than me, and he and I used to work together years ago, as a matter of fact. But I said, I'm out here, and I don't know, if something happens to you on the way home today, are you going to go, wait a minute, I'm hot. I've been out on the range all day. I don't feel like doing this. You're going to have to do your thing, right? So not to be like a Marine Corps drill instructor, right? I didn't say, I mentioned before, so I was in the Marine Corps. I spent my 18th birthday on Parris Island. So yeah, last year was my 50th anniversary. So the that mental thing about and discipline about just getting out there, let's practice this, let's get it done, and make become good at what you want to become good at, whether it's shooting a handgun or shooting a rifle or kicking a heavy bag or learning how to defend yourself or whatever. It takes a little bit of sweat equity, and I think a lot of people think that much like Cooper said, just because you own a handgun doesn't make you a gunfighter any more than owning a piano makes you a musician.
Exactly.
I see people regularly. Some come to my classes. I've had people come to classes that had never practiced drawing their pistol from a holster, and they carry daily, and couldn't figure out why they couldn't get their gun. That's true. I'm not. Fortunately, it hadn't happened much, but most people don't practice that. They'll go to the range and practice shooting, but they're not going to practice anything else. If I were to turn this camera around, I'm in my office upstairs at my house. So right here is a bunch of aerobic training equipment with a bunch of kettlebells and everything else and dumbbells on the floor. Over here is about literally probably about 500 or 600 books that I keep in this room. And then there's several targets up on a wall and a bunch of airsoft SIRT pistols laying around and everything else.
Yeah.
And I don't get to practice shooting as much as a lot of people think, but I do a little bit each day, and over a period of time, that all adds up. And getting people to do that consistently is tough, just like getting people to come to karate class twice a week. 2 hours a week, and people expect miracles. It took
Oh,
me
yeah.
it took me a long time to get proficient, where I thought that if I ever got in a real situation that I could defend myself. And having that black belt tied around your waist doesn't really mean a whole lot if you can't produce. So same thing with a gun. Just wearing that black belt doesn't make you a fighter.
No.
Nor does just having the gun. It's like having a driver's license doesn't mean you can drive NASCAR. Yeah, and so, you know, going back to that tie-in, I think there's so many things that cross over between the two arts. And John Farnham, I love him, man. He is a cowboy poet, philosopher beyond everybody that ever hear when they hear me tell a story about him, how he'll recite a poem at the end of every class. And people are just amazed when they hear him. They go, "Man, I don't know we could do that." And I go, "The dude is incredible." He's I mean, it's the same era the Tom Givens guys are, and the Masada, you've got all that era right there. That we, because young guys now, I'll be 68 this year, so I'm a young guy in this game. There is nothing new. Number one, just nothing new. You can go back and look, and I got books right here, the Sykes, Fairbairn, all those. You go back and look at those books, and you're going to see the same stuff being taught today that was taught back in the early 1900s.
Yeah, I mean, really, the only thing that's changed is the technology put into the guns.
Yeah,
the concepts are still the same.
Yep, and and you're 100% correct. The hardware has changed a little bit. For the most part, I'm okay. So before we start the 1911 versus everything else fight, I own one, and I've had one for a long time, and I like it, but I don't carry it anymore.
Yeah.
Not because I don't trust it, it's because of technology, number one, and better ammunition. So I can carry something a little bit lighter and smaller and still feel protected. I don't need to carry that big honking piece of iron around anymore. Not because it doesn't work or anything else. I trusted it for a long time and carried it on many SWAT call outs. So, but
I love my 1911s.
Yep.
I'm a far better shot sometimes with my 1911s. However, the drawer in front of me has nothing but 9mm in it now.
Yeah.
HKP 30, Glock 19X, Steyr M1A9 or M1A1s and A2s. That's what I've gone to because I can carry 19 rounds and extra magazines.
Well, it's kind of like, it's interesting. I just had a thought. You were talking about, I got all these different guns, and I've got more than one, I think. Most of them were lost in a boating accident. So I'm just beside myself with that one. People have asked me for years and years as a martial arts instructor, say, what's the best system? What's the best system to learn how to fight? And I go, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, it really doesn't make any difference. They're all the same. You can only punch and kick somebody so many different ways.
Yeah.
And I would debate anybody on that. That's not just my opinion. I mean, I've got literally dozens of on Mars. I'm looking at them right now, at least 2 shelves of them that I can see from right here. And if I open them up to the similar page, we're talking about punching, guess what? It's all going to be the same. And if you look at any one of the shooting books, you can pull out, like I said, you can pull out Shooting to Live versus any one of the newest books that have been put out on combat handgun shooting. And guess what? It's going to say the same thing. It's the same thing. Getting people to admit that, because I know for years and years and years, it was the 45 versus the 9mm, Weaver versus isosceles, revolver versus semi-automatic, 357 versus 40, whatever. You got all those arguments, and they're all a bunch of crap. And everybody that knows anything about, real combat and shooting and all this other stuff understands what needs to be done. So if you like 9mm better than 45, go ahead. If you like Shotokan karate better than you like Kung Fu, go for it, bro. We can still be friends, and we'll talk about it, and I'll drink with you. We'll be fine. But at the end of the day, it's all about practical application. So with this tie-in between martial arts and shooting, what is there anything I can do to make me a better shot? Is there something that I can do that makes me better if I have to fight with my handgun that's going to make me more effective, more efficient? And I think that martial arts is that can give you that, because I think from a footwork standpoint, you start cementing some of the concepts in that directly impact your ability to shoot effectively and efficiently and move and all the tactical stuff that we wind up doing. I think that it's a perfect fit.
It really is. I'm looking at it like this. I like to train retention shooting because
Mm-hmm.
it's like, yeah, you can draw your gun and draw and get to a stable platform and shoot targets all day long. But what are you going to do when a guy is literally on top of you? But if you look at it in a martial arts standpoint, you actually will know better ways to keep your balance. It's already ingrained in you if you're already a martial artist. You're not going to the ground as easy as somebody that just shoots.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a great way to, mix them together.
It gives you more options. All right. And again, so anybody that might see this and listen to it and say, well, he's been doing this 50 some on years. I'll go, yeah, okay, let's back up a little bit. So back in the day, we're looking at where World War II combatives, and this is where guys like Kelly McCann and some of these other guys, Bob Casper, back in the day, all were students of people that had trained in World War II combatives. And they looked at this very simple system, very effective. Pardon me. And they trained these World War II combatives were simple and effective. They had to be easy to teach, and they had to work because the people that were being trained didn't have a lot of time to get trained, and before they were out in the field and actually utilizing this stuff. Same thing with the shooting techniques that Fairbairn and Sykes and all those guys taught back in the day. Took lessons learned from the street, implemented them right away. Hey, this didn't work. This worked. We're going to teach this. All right. So we should look at that stuff. We know that stuff works. Why do we try and reinvent stuff all the time? I mean, everybody wants to have their own little, their thumbprint on something. It's like even Jack Weaver. We go back. I had some serious discussions with some people about Weaver versus isosceles stance, and everybody at some point shot Weaver stance because it was sexy and everybody said it worked. And Jeff Cooper was saying, this is the way it's got to be, and you got to do this. And everybody remembers that. If you've been shooting for any length of time, you remember that. I don't know when I switched from that into what I'm doing now, but I've had discussions with people that say, specifically would say, the Weaver stance was designed for combat. And the guy that said that, pretty smart guy, been around shooting game for a while, and he was a dyed-in-the-wool Weaver guy. He had studied at Gunsight. Okay, I don't think it was Gunsight when he went there. I think it was still API back in the day. So that's going back a couple of days. But he said this is the only way to do this, and I went, I don't know, sir. I'm thinking that there may be a time when you want to do that. I said, but this is a little bit easier, and everything. And nope, designed for combat. So I said, all right, I'll take your word for it, and I'm going to keep doing it my way, and we're going to be friends. So as I was doing some research and reading and everything, and I happened to find something that Jack Weaver had said or written down or whatever. And he said specifically that he started doing that because of the competition matches they were having in Big Bear, California, back the old leather slap days. And he says because of an elbow injury, and it helped him control the gun better. It wasn't designed for combat. It was designed for competition. So, okay, splitting hairs. I'm not trying to be right or wrong. I'm just saying, if it is what it is, if you want to use it, if it works for you, by all means use it. There are times when we're out on the range and I'm demonstrating stuff, and I may have to go from a traditional isosceles type stance to a more of a Weaver type stance. Don't make any difference. It really doesn't make any difference. I'm not, trying to do that. With martial arts, some systems are more punch oriented, hand oriented, some more kicking oriented, and that's fine. They work fine. I mean, everybody has their own thing. It just depends on what what you're trying to do. So
I know I switched from Weaver to isosceles again when I started shooting speed challenge matches,
mhm.
specifically because they make you shoot offhand, and I didn't like changing my body position. I like to be able to stay
Mhm.
on target. And when I switched, I got faster. I got better, more accurate.
Well, it's like when you go to practice. It's like when I was fighting professionally, I had a pretty strict training regimen, 6 days a week, and um, I always I tell people this all the time. I always learned more from fights that I lost than when I won, because if I win, then you think, okay, I didn't do anything wrong, and really wasn't a whole lot to take away. All right, which is true. So, but when I lost, I very specifically remembered this is what I did. So I would go back in the gym and say, okay, I need to work on this, and I would get better, try and get better at whatever it was I screwed up on, and
Yeah.
that helped me a tremendous amount, because back when you were fighting in tournaments, I don't want to say you had to impress the judge, but you had to make sure the judge saw you score. And
Yeah.
So I trained to make it really obvious, so that when I did something, they would see, okay, that's what he did. Okay, I got it. So from a shooting point, it's the same thing. I have this, not on this shirt, but on one of the shirts that we have, I have a bunch of tenets that I've kind of put together over the years, about 20 of them. One of them is practice what you suck at. Probably one of those things that Clint Smith probably said back down the road, all right, one time or another, but it's true. So if you're really good at drawing really fast and shooting with your dominant hand, well, how often do you practice with your non-dominant hand? And I practice a lot because I'm really right-handed.
Yeah.
And fortunately, here back in December, I had my shoulder replaced. It didn't really impact me. I could still carry my gun because I'm right-handed, so it was fine. But if it had been my right shoulder, that'd have been a tough one. So but I
Oh,
was
yeah.
pretty confident that I could still shoot with my left hand. And even now, since I'm doing therapy, I'm still trying to, shoot more with my left hand, because overall it makes me concentrate more and it makes me a better shot with my right hand. So,
Well, it's funny when I go to competition and they're like, okay, you're shooting non-dominant hand. For some reason on those stages, my scores are higher. I concentrate so much more when I'm shooting left-handed than I do in my right hand. And it should be opposite, but honestly, I kind of look forward to those matches.
out at the range where we have our classes, a guy was doing some, they were kind of like renegade bullseye matches, and
Mhm.
you'd shoot, you'd shoot some two-handed, you shoot some dominant hand only, and support hand only. And when we're shooting it support hand only, I pulled my gun out there, and we were shooting. I was shooting 1911. I was shooting in 45. Then I put my conversion kit on, shot 22, and it amazes me. People know they have to shoot that, and yet they just kind of like throw those 10 rounds away.
Yeah.
And so I was, yeah, not by a long shot, no pun intended, the best, but because I practice and know what it feels like, uh, I think, and was able to concentrate more, like you said, I always did pretty well. So, again, practice what you're not good at. Don't always get in your head. If you're already good at something, practice it's not going to make you any better.
Yeah.
Incrementally, but things that you're not good at, you can make, pretty big strides really quick. So,
Yeah. I mean, I never gave up practicing with a rifle. I've always been really decent with a rifle. Can't say I'm the best with a rifle, but I've always been decent with a rifle.
yeah,
Pistols, pistols sometimes are hit or miss. So I concentrated really heavy on practicing with my pistols over the years. And then unfortunately, some of my rifle skills started lacking because I put it in the corner and I was like, okay, I'm going to use pistols from here on out. So now it's like when I go to shoot, I don't shoot on a traditional range because half the stuff I like to do, they don't like you doing on a range.
All right.
So we have to go out to the hunting property, we put up targets, and we shoot however we want, fast, slow, standing up, laying. It don't matter anymore. So, but it's like a lot of these guys, if they're not taking classes, they go to an indoor range or they go to an outdoor range, and you can't draw and fire, you can't rapid fire, you can't, you know, practice other tenets other than your fundamentals, and that is it for a lot of these guys. So
It's hard. Again, I'm a real big proponent of dry fire. Yeah, I'm lucky. I have a couple Tsr pistols and I have the laser thing set up here, so I can do that. A lot of people don't want to invest that much money. Well, you don't have to. There's a lot of other ways you can do it, but the weapon handling skills, the drawing the gun or presenting it, loading, unloading, malfunction clearing, all that stuff you can do without having to get any kind of special equipment. And people need to do that, because that's where I see most of the problems when people come to classes. It's not that they can't shoot. The marksmanship skills are pretty good. But it's weapon manipulation skills that end up being the problem. And that's all part of the game, whether you're shooting competition or whether you're shooting, as a law enforcement officer. I was at Hunter 10 years, and I used to see MPs in my office, civilian guys out all the time, and I'd ask them questions. I said, "Well, how come you're doing that?" And we're shooting Berettas, all right, the 92s. I said, "How come you're doing that?" Well, that's the way we were shown how to do it. I said, "You want to know a better way to do that?" And I said, "Let me show you a better way to do that." Well, they never showed us that. I said, "Well, they probably didn't know." But and I was with the SWAT team for 25 years. I was a commander for about 13, almost 13 before I got off. And I got to say that I still see some of those guys every now and again. And every time we get together, I said, let's get the boys back together. And let's go make peace out of confusion, because apparently some guys out there aren't listening anymore. The best group of guys I've ever worked with. I'm telling you, these guys were, if you look behind me here, these plaques right here behind me are awards that some of them are personal awards that I won, but some of them are team awards that we won down at the SWAT roundup in Orlando. And we went down there as huge 50 teams from all over the United States. In some cases, we had a team from GSG 9 there one year, LAPD, Dallas, and one of those plaques up there is our fourth place. We won fourth place overall one year, beating out LA and Dallas and some other teams. So we had a hell of a team together here, just in little old Savannah, Georgia, and our guys could shoot too. Most of those are awards up there that we won in individual competitions over some of the best shooters in the United States. So I'm really proud of that. The fact that I was with that group of guys, and the fact that we did as well as we did back in the day. And people do that anymore. But
right. You're telling me that Chatham County, Savannah PD, at one point had one of the best SWAT teams in America? And
I will tell you that the Savannah Police Department did, because once after the merger occurred, they quit going.
Yeah.
So because I know the county had a team, the county police department had a team, and they trained however they trained. We didn't get involved with them too much. We trained twice a month, and we were getting to the point now. We innovated a bunch of stuff. We had tactical medics on the team. We were one of the first teams in the state that had tactical medics. All my guys were trained up to first responder level as far as the medical side of the house was concerned. We had 3 guys on our team that were high angle rope rescue instructors. yeah, we just that's why we changed the name initially to ERT, Emergency Response Team, as opposed to just SWAT.
Yeah.
And then, but when I left and I got off the team, it kind of fell back by the wayside. And now there's a bunch of good guys on the team now. I couldn't even name you one guy that was on the team now. If they all look like my little brothers.
Jeez.
They all look like they're 10 years old.
I mean, that's saying something, though, because we know how much money that LA and Dallas and all those big cities dump into their ERT SWAT teams. And it just blows my mind that Savannah had that.
We were the first year we went down there. We were the only team out of 50 teams that were still shooting revolvers.
Jeez.
Right? And that was what we brought with us. And we shot, and we still finished in the top 10. All right. That was the first year we went. All right. Then we went back there and we got new guns, and we went back down there. And I think the year that we won 4th place, there's 5 events, and we won one event right off the top. We placed first. We won the officer rescue event, and then or hostage rescue event. I'm sorry, the hostage rescue event. And then we placed. We stayed in the top 10 throughout the whole thing. Like I said, we won a place in 4th, and that was the year LA didn't even place in the top 10.
Wow.
So we had a hell of a group of guys that we trained a couple, 3 or 4 times a week for about 2 months prior to the event, and we made our mark down there for sure. They knew we were coming.
That's good. Oh, geez.
And the interesting thing is, let's tie that back into what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Out of the group of guys that went down there, probably 60% of them were martial artists, actually had black belt ranks in some martial art, and were all shooters. And most of the guys that went down to Orlando were on our pistol team. So we were able to combine all that stuff together. So it was pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, there you go.
we had them in there. We had MP5s for a long time, and the PDWs, and then right prior to the Olympics, we were able to purchase some more guns, and they weren't all MP5s, but we purchased some more guns, and we upgraded what we had in the armory. It was made us feel good. I know Don Mendonza was the city manager at the time, and Dave Gallatley was the chief. And I remember the chief driving me over to Don's office, and he wanted me to explain why I wanted to do this bartering thing that we were doing. He says, "Well, what if I just write you a check for that?" I said, "That would be really nice, sir." And so he reached down in this is not a joke. He reached down in his desk, pulled out the checkbook, and actually wrote me a check. He says, "Here." He says, "Go buy them." And I went, "Yes, sir."
Yeah.
We did. Our guys were very well thought of, and within the department and within the city, they knew that we weren't going to be out there doing stupid stuff all the time. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, I miss the area. I like, Savannah, Jessup, that whole area. But then again, I don't miss the area because when I go and visit, which we go down quite often, it seems like everything's gone downhill.
It's different now. It's like my wife and I live out on the south side. We've lived out here for a long time, and going downtown. I was downtown. I had to go talk to a client a couple of weeks ago, and they're on River Street. So number one, parking is tough, and then the client that I was talking to, their business was only about a block and a half away from where that British soccer guy was killed, and they got real excited about their staff, and because one of the places they have several bars in their building and all this other stuff. So, I don't go down there too much. My wife and I don't go down there that much. It's a hassle. I'm not worried about bad things happening to us so much, but it's just a hassle going down there. And, we just kind of stay away. We stay out here on the south side and do our thing.
Yeah. I think the last time I was in Savannah, it was like, I don't like this anymore.
It's
Not fun.
yeah, going out. So we had the Smith and Wessons for a long time, revolvers. But the first time I was on the city, I had a nickel plated 38, and when I came back, they had upgraded to the stainless steel version, and I have that. I kept that when we transitioned. We were allowed to keep our revolvers if we wanted to. So I have my service revolver with me, and then when I retired, they let me keep my. We had Glock 21, so they let me keep that too. So. But I think I lost both of those in the boating accident as well. So they're at the bottom of the ocean now. And
They're playing with the fishes.
yeah, tragic thing, but
Yeah.
when I tell people we go out qualifying, it's really kind of funny. They said, well, we had to qualify 25 yards. We had to shoot 5 rounds. I said, brother, I said 25 yards. I said, we used to qualify from 50 yards and under time, strict time, 6 rounds from 50 yards, 18 rounds from 25 yards under time. And then 25, 15, 7, and 3, I think, if I remember back in the old days. And then finally they took out the 50-yard line and just 25 yards and in there. So it's a little bit different. I talked to a guy who says, well, here we had to shoot from the 25-yard line. And I went, man, so what? And I told him about the 50-yard line. He says, really? And I went, yep, really.
Everybody should be shooting from the 50-yard line still.
I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at traditional like police gunfights now, they're slinging more lead downrange without hitting target or even being close than I've ever seen before.
We were out with the some of the MPs were qualifying one day, and I was just out there as an observer to be on the range. And this young private comes back, and he's all excited. He's got his target in his hand, and he goes, Sarge, I did it. I scored expert. And I said, well, okay, cool. So I'm going to sit here. I said, hey man, let me see your target. So I look at his target, and I'm looking at it, and it's a big, like a B-28 target, big old, black silhouette.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it, and I go, that's expert? And he goes, yeah, I got 27. I said, 27 what? He says, I hit target 27 times. Sure enough, there's 27 holes in the target. I said, how many rounds you shoot, brother? He says, 50. So I said, let me do my math real quick. So I did my math. I said, so that means you hit that about 60% of the time. I said, that's a failure. That's an F.
Yeah.
He goes, no, that's expert. And I'm looking at the sergeant. I'm going, what? Are you kidding me? It's just 27 times. I said, that's an F. I said, that's not even close to being qualified. Well, that's what they qualify. I said,
yeah.
Yeah.
Military standards is slack too, so I can't even say much there. And MPs, I mean, seriously, do we even need them anymore? They're all civilian contractors at this point.
Should be. So, hopefully, if somebody, this book, like I said, is out of print. Real interesting concept. I think that I may be going out. I know Gabe Suarez has got a rifle class coming up toward the end of the year out in Arizona. I'm in the process of corresponding with him. I really would like to sit down and talk to him more about what he's doing with this correlation between the shooting and the martial arts. I think that there's a big, a huge connection there. I think that if anybody had any background in either one of the two, that they should investigate that. And, anybody that's interested in getting in touch with me, by all means, please do. You can get in touch with me through the website that's scrolling on the bottom of the scrreen there, and I'll get back to you in a minute. I usually have my phone with me, and if I don't get back to you within a day, I always tell people watch the 11 o'clock news because usually something bad's happened. But I will get back to you. If you contact me and you want to ask me questions or you got some stuff, I will definitely respond to you. I am very interested in getting more people involved in from the martial arts side into shooting, and also from the shooting into the martial arts. I think that there's a whole lot of benefit for both if that were to happen.
Oh, yes. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. Tell everybody how to get in contact with you other than the website.
Okay.
And what classes you got coming up.
So, okay, classes coming up soon are this weekend. Got John Farnham is going to be here this coming Saturday and Sunday for his urban rifle class. You can get to it through our website, but you have to register on his website. If you go to the GTAC website, if you go up to the store button up at the very top, all of our current classes are coming up. We just did a counter carjacking class. We've got a couple of handgun classes coming up. We've got toward the end of June, we're going to have a course called Tactical Steel. We're going to shoot a whole day of nothing but shooting steel target scenarios and some moving targets, some new moving targets that we've just got. So kind of excited about that. So you can get me again through the website, or you can email me at gatactical1953@gmail.com. That'll get to me right away, and I will get back to you just like that.
All right, then. Like I said, thanks for coming on. We're going to talk more about this martial arts thing later on.
You let me know, man. I'll talk guns and karate all day long, man.
Oh, yeah. So, but without further ado, thanks for coming on. I got to close this thing out, and we'll talk later. Thanks a lot.
Brother, thanks a lot. See you later.
Yep. All right, guys. That was a very interesting show. Something we're going to cover some more later because now I'm super, super interested in it again. I know Dan's got a show coming up at 7:30, 1930 for those of us still in the military mind. And I will tell you what it is in 1 second. I just got to pull it back up again. I actually save all this stuff. I just have to look and see. Well, actually, it's saying 2100, so 9 p.m. You got Season 1, Episode 8, A Pack of Riders, and yeah, there it is. Chase the Wolf and Wolf Bits News is coming up at 1930 with Chasing Wolf. So 2 more shows tonight. Y'all stay tuned. Go through CTW TV Network, and thanks for joining us tonight. See you next week. Don't forget tomorrow, Backyard Prepperversity with me. And we have a lot to talk about because a lot has happened in the last 2 weeks since I did a show. And you'll understand when you see it. All right. Love you guys. Keep them loaded. Keep them ready. And y'all have a good night. Don't forget it's Memorial Day. And yeah. You guys know what it means.